Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Tonight, we are going to be talking about something very near and dear to my heart. We're going to be discussing online marketing and what it can do for your practice. Online marketing is something that I've been involved with now for, well, I would say really heavily since about 2009. When we sold our first practice, I moved to Brisbane, as most of you will know. And during that period of time, my wife Miranda and I had a conversation, and we made a conscious choice not to buy a practice at that particular moment. I'm the sort of person, though, that gets fairly bored fairly quickly, and I discovered that I really wanted to do something around the business space. So just out of pure chance, I ended up learning how to build websites, and I started selling all sorts of interesting and random things online, nothing to do with dentistry at all. There's all sorts of ebooks and other things. But the key thing around that was that I learned a lot about how to build a website. What are the elements of a good website? What are the things that convert visitors into buyers? How do you get people to visit a website? All those key fundamentals that go into online marketing. And so in about 2009, I dipped my toe into that. And as I said, I was building sites to sell all sorts of things. And then in about 2010, I think it was, one of my friends who is a dentist came to me and said, Jesse, you know what a crown is, you know what a bridge is. Do you think you could build me a website? So I said yes to that. And one thing led to another, and he got some good results, and then more of my friends asked me to do that. And before too long, I built a boutique business around online marketing for dentists, and I built quite a few websites for quite a few people, and getting lots of good things happening there. And the reason I stopped doing it, just to complete that story, so you know why, is it just stopped being fun. To be frank, I stopped enjoying building websites, and I found that I was getting into discussions that were just frustrating and a bit tricky because I'm not a graphic designer, and as the design and aesthetic requirements increased, I found that I was having discussions about whether someone preferred the mauve or the lilac, and it just, as I said, it stopped being fun. But notwithstanding that, I am still very interested in online marketing. I still maintain currency in that space, and I'm going to share a couple of little stories with you as we go through. But let's get into it. The first thing I just wanted to share with you around online marketing, of course, is that if you get it wrong, clearly there's a big problem there. Getting it wrong, ultimately you end up with a lack of patient flow. You don't have patients in your appointment book, and in today's competitive marketplace, those that win will be the best marketers. So having an online marketing strategy really is part of a modern marketing strategy. So if you get this wrong, A, you're going to have no patience. B, you're going to find that your cash flow and financial performance of the practice suffers. C, you're going to find you're doing sort of itty-bitty dentistry on patients who may or may not be your ideal patients. So it just ultimately leads to an empty appointment book, a loss of productivity and profitability, and an overwhelming feeling of frustration. And when I've met when I've met clients in this position or dentists in this position, they're generally feeling a bit miserable about their practice and about their life because, as I said, they're not doing the sort of work that lights them up. They're not doing the sort of work that adds value to other people in their mind, and they're not making a profit from it. So they're feeling a bit icky. Now, the potential or the promise of getting this right, however, is quite the opposite. If you do develop a very good online marketing strategy, there are some key things that you're going to get out of it. The first thing, of course, is you're going to have an automatic and automated way of generating patient flow. So that's really cool because if you get that right, you've got a marketing activity or almost a marketing department working automatically on autopilot for you. So if you get that right, as I said, you're getting leads in automatically, which is great. Now, on top of that, the second really good thing about that is you're not just getting any old patient, you're getting your ideal patient, the sort of patient that when you see their name in the appointment book, you smile. And you smile because they're a nice person, you get on well with them, they accept the treatment that you recommend, and all those other sorts of things there. So that's the second really good reason about getting this right. You end up with more ideal patients. And the third thing is, as I mentioned just previously, is about they accept treatment, and you're doing the sort of stuff that's going to ensure that your practice grows, your revenue's increasing, and you're feeling fulfilled both, I suppose, emotionally, but as well as financially. So getting online marketing right pays huge dividends. So there's a real opportunity there to make a practice that you love, that rewards you financially and delivers great value to your patients, of course. So I just want to share with you a little story around that. Some years ago, as I mentioned earlier, when I was doing done-for-you marketing for dentists, I ran a marketing campaign that was, I suppose, textbook in the way that was just executed. We had a good plan and we executed it well for this particular orthodontist. And what we did for him in the space of 3 months using the online marketing methods, which I'm going to share with you tonight, we generated 463 leads for that particular orthodontist. Now, his conversion rate was 63%. And what that meant was there was a total of about 291 two patients, something around that, accepting treatment. And of course, at $6,000 a pop, that ended up being close to $1.75 million in revenue, additional revenue, as a result of online marketing executed well in a space of about 4 months. So there is certainly good potential to do well there. And as I said, that particular campaign was just one that we nailed because we had all the planning done properly. We had the strategy mapped out, and then of course we executed that really well from the outset. So that's what you guys can do too. Now the numbers will vary, but essentially it's the same thing. Okay, before we get into it, I want to go through 5 key principles that we're going to go through today, and they're going to make framing this a lot easier. The first one is to understand that there are no silver bullets, and you've heard me say this before, because what I often hear dentists say is, Jesse, tell me the 2 things, the 3 things, or however many things that I just need to do. Give me the secret formula of how to get patients through the door, or why is my website not working? What's the one thing I need to do on my website to make it turn from, something really horrible to something, beautiful and sexy? Well, I'm just going to tell you that there is no such thing as a silver bullet. Getting your online marketing right takes thought, preparation, time, and frankly, a bit of money to do it well. So I just want you guys to be aware of that from the get-go, because it's not a quick fix. It's not like the days, probably in the early 2000s where you could slap up any old website and be, attracting new patients. You've got to be a little more clever than that. Now, you've got to have a strategy behind it. So we're going to go through that as well. The second key principle that I want to share with you is about not getting lazy. And the reason I've put this in, maybe I could reframe this language a little bit, but the point around this is that most dentists I know will say, I just want to do the clinical work. I just want to be a dentist. Can't I just do that? Please let me just be a dentist. But again, it just doesn't work that way. And so for all of you practice owners, you guys need to be taking an active interest in your marketing. And for practical purposes, what that means is being involved in the process, being involved in the strategy behind your online marketing. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to go out and code websites. Far from it. Obviously, you want to use your time for the highest and best use. But you can't abdicate responsibility for this stuff. You need to be across it and have an understanding and a working knowledge of what's going on. And again, coming back to the working knowledge point, it's about being able to ask intelligent questions of the people you're engaging on your behalf, because there are a lot of shysters out there. There are a lot of people who will happily take your money and they'll tell you that they're an expert at online marketing, or they'll tell you that they're an expert at social media or whatever it is they're an expert in. And oftentimes you can find that you're spending good money and getting very limited return for that. So again, be interested, know what's good, know what's not, ask good quality questions, and then you can figure out whether the people you're dealing with do actually know what they're talking about. Probably one of the most overlooked things about your website is that your website is written for other people. It's not written for us. It's not written for the dentist. It's written for your ideal patient. And the foundation of any marketing, no matter whether it's online, offline, whatever, is to be very, very clear about who it is you're trying to attract to your practice. And that exercise is understanding their needs, their frustrations, their wants, what keeps them awake at night. And all of you have access to the resource vault. And you'll see in the resource vault there's an activity where you profile your ideal patient. And when you start to understand what it is about your ideal patient that concerns them, what it is that motivates them, all of that material, you can then make sure that your marketing is directed towards answering those questions, those concerns, and those aspirations. The analogy that I often use with marketing is it's like throwing a dart at a dartboard. All your marketing is aimed at your ideal patient. Because if we try and appeal to too many people, the marketing message gets lost. It becomes hazy, it becomes disjointed, and all of a sudden, people on the website become confused. Is this for me? Is it not? I don't know whether I should be going to this person or not. And a confused mind says no. So it's really important that we get absolute clarity about this ideal patient avatar and direct all our marketing to that. Now, to keep with that analogy, if you throw a dart at the dartboard and you happen to miss the bullseye and you hit the 20 or the 18 or something else, that's fine. It's like going fishing. If you throw your line into the ocean and you pull out you're aiming to attract beautiful tuna onto your line, but you pull out a snapper instead, well, then that's okay. That snapper's still a tasty fish. And same with your marketing. If you attract a patient who's not exactly your ideal patient but still good, then that's cool too. But it is important that you direct your marketing at the bullseye. The fourth key principle around marketing, and particularly online marketing, is to understand that great marketers are great gardeners. And what do I mean by that? Again, Nino, I can see you on the line there. You'll be familiar with this analogy, but some of the newer guys might not be. Just to use an analogy, what I would say is marketing is a bit like going to catch butterflies in the traditional sense. And so you'll hear all these buzzwords, all these catch cries. We're going to open the funnel wide. And that's like if you're going out to catch a butterfly, that's going out with a giant butterfly net that's got a big wide aperture on it. So when you go swoosh, you attract more butterflies and you catch more butterflies in that and you take them back to your garden. The other buzzword you might hear is we're going to extend our marketing reach. And what we're trying to do there is we're trying to attract patients from other suburbs into our practice. And again, what that's like, it's like going out with a butterfly net that's got a really long pole on it. So when you bring the net down, you can reach over into your neighbour's yard and catch some butterflies from there and bring them across into yours. And the other kind of language you hear is multi-channel marketing, which is when you're going out with 2 or 3 nets and you're doing a bit of radio, a bit of internet, a bit of social media, and you're basically throwing lots of things out there and seeing what comes back. But the key to understanding great marketing, no matter whether it's online or offline, is the best marketers are the best gardeners. And what I mean by that is if you grow a garden, if you create an experience, this is the analogy for the garden, then your butterflies will come to you voluntarily. You don't need to catch them. They will be drawn to you. So we want to create a lovely garden that's full of sweet smelling flowers so our ideal patients, our butterflies, come to us. We can do that in an online sense, and we can of course do that in a physical sense by really understanding the patient journey, the patient experience, and choreographing that so it's exquisite and delightful and surprises patients at as many turns as possible. And when we do that, we're going to give our patients a story to tell. But we can do that online as well. So let's think about that in a moment. The thing I would also comment on is that people can copy what you do but not who you are. And one of my frustrations I've experienced is even in not just my dental practice, but in this business, you're doing something that you think is cool and interesting, then all of a sudden someone tries to copy it. And while that's a frustration, what we all need to understand is that people can copy what you do, but they can't copy who you are. And to take that thought process a little bit further is that it's really important that your website and all your marketing does reflect a little bit about who you are. and that you're not beige, you're not vanilla, you're not kind of this sea of nothingness, this sea of sameness. When you hear people on their website say, we aim to provide, state-of-the-art dentistry in a caring and comfortable environment, it almost makes me want to vomit. Seriously, I can feel the bile come out my throat as I say that, because it is so beige, there's nothing distinctive about it, and it's timid. No one wants to stand out and be authentic. So we've just gone through this process of writing bios for our new website, and one of the things that we had to write about was some of the things that make us quirky, make them about so give a little bit of ourselves. And just to give you an example of that, and this is just a bit of humour, a bit of fun, it's just us being a bit kooky, and you don't necessarily need to follow this line, of course. But the reason I'm sharing this with you is it is actually who we are. So in my particular instance, I'm a very OCD person, and so one of my favourite things at work is to pick up the dust buster and make sure there's no leaf litter anywhere, because in Canberra, of course, we get autumn leaves everywhere, and it drives me mental when there's leaf litter on the carpet. So at any opportunity, you'll see me vacuuming the leaf litter up. So my bio on the website will say, Jesse is OIC of the dustbuster, and be careful you don't get vacuumed up in his path, or something to that effect. And on Miranda's bio, I think one of the comments on hers is, the most interesting question a work colleague has ever asked her is, "Will you marry me?" And thankfully she said yes. So again, it's just our story. It's just a little bit that makes us us. And I would encourage you guys to find your stories and share them as well. I was working with a client some time ago, and she had a really interesting story about being a refugee and how she came across unable to speak the language, and she had to learn English as she was going through school. And one of her greatest motivations was to give back to people who were less fortunate, because she'd experienced hardship as a child growing up. And it's a compelling and interesting story. And I'm not suggesting we need to exploit that in a really cynical kind of way, but it is important to let people know a bit about who you are and what drives you, what makes you tick, and knowing the backstory, if you like. All right. So how does this work in real life? What's this online marketing thing all about? Because it can be confusing. You see all these things like design and strategy and all these other sorts of things, and there's again lots of jargon that can be brought up here, because a lot of people will talk in this lingo that just doesn't make intuitive sense, whether it's HTML or we'll understand what keyword research is, and backlinking and all that sort of stuff. So I want to keep things really simple, because what you need to understand is that online marketing is really not rocket science. And I'm going to break it down into its simplest form as I can tonight for you. So here we go. The first thing we're going to mention is your website is at the very heart of your online marketing. Now, I know that sounds fairly obvious, but one of the things that gets caught up is, when we start engaging with things like social media, it can be that your Facebook page becomes, the center of your marketing universe in the online space. But it's really, really important that you own your own real estate. Facebook, great though it is owned by Mark Zuckerberg. And we want to make sure that we're forever directing traffic back to our website. If you thought of your marketing, your online marketing system as like the solar system, your website is the sun, and everything else revolves around it. So that's the way I'd like you to think about that. So getting your website right is really key. And when it comes to websites themselves, there's a couple of components. The first thing is to understand that we need to get people to visit the website, and we'll talk about website traffic in a moment. That's the I suppose the lingo for getting people to visit your website. And the second thing is really all about conversion. So once someone does visit your website, how do we get them to take the action that we really want them to take? So I want you to understand that's internet marketing in a nutshell. It's not any more complicated than that, and it's important to keep it simple. Now, we can dive into each of those things, those two key elements, traffic and conversions, and go into a whole stack of detail, a whole stack of minutia. And that's fine, we can do a bit of that. But just to take that global view, it's traffic and conversions. So when we look at a website, there are 10 key things I want you to think about on a website. These are some of the features that every website should have, and I call them the 10 commandments of a good website. The first thing is to be consistent with your brand. It's really important to build a brand and so that your business takes on a life of its own and it's not just related to the individual practitioners. And you would have heard me talk about in previous times the triad of brands where you have your company brand, your personal brand, and in some cases, a product brand. So let me just give you some examples of that just to bring that to life for you. So for instance, the company brand would be the practice brand. So in my case, it would be Bespoke Dental. The personal brand is, obviously Dr. Jessie Green, or in my wife's case, Dr. Miranda Sageman. But the product brand, which is a little less obvious, could be if you're doing things like Zoom whitening or Invisalign or something that has brand recognition. So those are the triad of brands. Now, as you build a brand, it's important that your website is consistent with that. So when you're going through the process of building a website, it's often very helpful to go through a brand strategy exercise as well. And there are some key components about building a brand that we won't go into tonight, but just understand that it's important. And if you're looking to go through a brand strategy exercise, I can certainly either share with you some resources, and Anoop, who I can see is on the call tonight with Kitkey, that's the document I shared with you today. That's the outcome of that. So it's really important that your brand is consistent with the website and vice versa. That includes the language, and again, you'll know that I've done an exercise called the 100 words exercise. So you actually create a lexicon for your brand. The language of your brand is really, really important. So that becomes part of your marketing collateral. Second thing is your website should be focused on your ideal patient avatar, and I've spoken about that already, so I don't think we need to go through that in much more detail. The third thing, though, is that content is king. You need to have excellent content on your website. Make sure it's well written. You're educating your ideal patient avatar. You're answering the questions that are in their head. If you know your ideal patient avatar so well, you'll know the questions that they ask. You'll know what keeps them awake at night. And again, what I'm hearing people ask me all the time is, how do I know that, Jesse? Well, here's my question for you, or my tip for you. In other words, it would be to have a conversation with some of your existing patients who you would consider ideal patients and just survey them and ask them some questions. What is it that you like about coming to our practice? What are the things you value most? What are the things you care about most with your dental care? All these sorts of questions come up so that you can get a picture and start to pull a jigsaw together of what your ideal patient avatar looks like, and then your website, of course, can speak to those things. I would encourage you all to build an opt-in. An opt-in is when you have a box on your website where someone can leave their name and email in return for a downloadable report or to take a quiz or to do whatever it happens to be. So if you go to my drjessiegreen.com website, you'll see I've got opt-ins all over the place. People can opt in to never miss a blog. People can opt in to download the report about how to build a high-performance practice. So there's all those sorts of things. Now, I'm going to reshape some of those things in a little while, but the purpose of the opt-in is to understand this. People might come to your site and not book an appointment. As much as we want them to, they might not. But what we want to do is have the capacity to remain in contact with them. And so when I spoke about that orthodontist, what we did with him is we built a really good opt-in strategy. We built a really good lead magnet so that nice, juicy, tantalizing report that people wanted to download. And 463 of people did over 12 or 13 weeks. And of those 463, 290 odd ended up accepting treatment because we built a follow-up sequence to that as well. So it's not just getting the names, it's then building out the follow-up sequence and building that relationship with people. It's important that we take an approach that's to add value and genuinely aim to enhance their lives with any piece of communication. I just saw this, really interesting article about how to keep your teeth clean while you've got braces, or, whatever it happens to be. Thought you might enjoy it. And so it's rather than being, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, spammy or sleazy, or, we want to make sure we're doing it from the point of view of benefiting them, not just us. Pardon me. All right, so the next thing is to make sure you do your research before you build your website. If I had $1 for every time someone had built a website before doing any research, oh my goodness, I'd have a pile of money as tall as Mount Everest, because so many people adopt this build it and they will come mentality, and that is just not true. You need to understand what people are looking for to really give it to them, so you can build the website knowing that people are going to be looking for what you offer them. So just to tell you a story, when I was a university student way back in the prehistoric days, we used to go to this nightclub in Brisbane called Fridays, and it was down on the river there, and midnight would come around, or 1 o'clock or whatever it was, and we'd all kind of roll out of the club. And there used to be this terrible van out the front of the club that would sell the dodgiest hamburgers. Goodness knows if they were safe to eat, but nonetheless, on a Friday night after we'd had a few too many drinks, we would go and eat these burgers. And the reason I'm telling you about that is because this guy who ran the van knew that he had to go where there was a crowd. He wanted to go where there were people who were looking for what he had to offer at that particular moment in time. Now, clearly, I'm not at all advocating that you should have a terrible product like he did, because there's no way you'd eat that hamburger if you were sober. I absolutely advocate having a good product, but it's understanding what people are looking for and giving it to them. And you do that through a thing called keyword research. So you can use various paid and free keyword tools, but essentially it's knowing what people are searching for online. So for instance, with Johan there, you might be looking at how many people are searching for dentists in Canada Bay. You might want to understand similarly, what's the market for Invisalign in the Gold Coast, or whatever it happens to be. And then what you can do is you can structure your website in such a way that it meets the needs of what people are already looking for. And what we're effectively doing is, if you go for the fishing analogy that I used earlier, essentially what we're doing is we're going to where the fish are already biting, and we're dropping our line in there. So we're doing what the man with the van did, and he's going to where the people were ready to buy, and that's exactly what we're doing, is we're putting our website in front of people who are already looking for what we offer. Having a call to action is really important. A call to action is basically an instruction for people to do things. It's a very clear, I use the word command cautiously, but it's a direction. Your next step is boom, or call now. Whatever it happens to be. And I'll show you an example of one in a little moment. And that really relates back to what we used to call direct response marketing back in the day. And direct response marketing, when I was doing it, I'll walk you through this a bit more, was very much around call to actions. It's important in today's mobile-dominated environment. You have a website that renders well on a mobile device. That's incredibly obvious these days, but just so you know, more than 80% of searching is done on mobile devices now, handheld devices. So you need to have a website that renders well on a mobile device. There are two ways you can do that. The first way is to build an individual mobile site, and typically you'll see a mobile site with the prefix m. Whatever the domain is. So for instance, it could be m.bespokedental.com.au. That would be a mobile version of a site, and it is a different site. The alternative is to have a responsive design, and a responsive design is the same website, but it will detect what type of hardware the website is being viewed on and resize itself accordingly. And that is the far more modern way of doing it. The advantages of that are you don't have to pay for 2 website builds. You don't have to pay for the maintenance of 2 websites. And see is you tend to get a much better design, a more user-friendly design when you've got a responsive design. So my comment would be responsive designs are a more modern approach, and certainly the way I would encourage you to look at it. Use tech well. Having click-to-call functionality, again, that speaks to having a mobile-friendly site. When people want to call you, they need to be able to touch their screen and have it bring up the phone number, so they are not trying to remember phone numbers and type it into the keypad on their phone. They've got the ability to click to call from the website. The other element is remarketing, which again, I'll share that with you. When people come to your website, you want to have remarketing installed. Any web developer will know this. Any web developer worth their salt should know this, or someone who's running your Google AdWords for you. What this will do is, if you were to come to my website, you'd get a cookie installed, and what that means is, as you go around the internet, I can now have other ads on the Google Content Network, which are basically image ads, follow you around the internet. So if you've ever been onto Booktopia, for instance, and then all of a sudden these Booktopia ads pop up everywhere, it's because they've remarketed you. And the way to get rid of them, just so you know, is to clear the cookies on your machine. Most people don't clear cookies very regularly. So that's completely cool. Johan, can you hear me okay now? Hopefully you can hear. Could everyone hear that okay? Yep, good. Sorry, mate, I just saw that question come through. Great. So have that remarketing installed. It's really important. Now, to take that one layer further, I was sharing this with Anoop again today. We spoke a bit about online marketing today. You could use pay-per-click marketing, for instance, on Facebook, where you can target your ad demographically. So, for instance, if your ideal patient was over the age of 55, but less than 65, and happened to live in, I'll just use Canberra, in the suburb of Turner, where my practice is, and they're interested in, I don't know, cricket. I could create an ad on Facebook that targeted people between 55 and 65 who live in Turner who are interested in cricket. Then as they come to my website, they get remarketed or cookied, and then as they go out around the internet, those Google content ads will follow them around. So now I'm actually only having ads that follow 55 to 65-year-olds who live in Turner and who are interested in cricket around. So I can then make sure that the ad that follows them around is really relevant. And that means, again, they're going to be more likely to come back to my website. All right, so that's cool. Let's have a look here. Understand that your website is a living communication tool. It should be up to date and living, not static. So, again, if you've got the website from 2004, it's probably time to update it. So it should be updated regularly. And make sure it's optimized for the user. Most people are time poor and want quick answers, so having FAQ sections are good. The capacity for online booking is a very personal one. In our practice, we don't do that because we want people to experience our lovely receptionist. But if your ideal patient avatar is someone who wants to book online, then you should consider doing that. So those are the 10 commandments of building a website. So it's important that you understand those, guys. So that's cool. All right. So let's go through some of the things about keyword research. We did touch on this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Keyword research, as I said, is you need to do this before your website is built, using either free or paid tools to understand what keywords are being searched that are relevant to your particular practice. Again, if you're a dentist in Coorparoo and Brisbane, you'd want to know how many people are looking for a dentist in Coorparoo. And so then your website needs to include some of those keyword phrases like dentist in Coorparoo in a natural way, so it sounds conversational rather than just writing, dentist in Coorparoo 100 times over. Google's smarter than that. They'll penalise you for that big time. So make sure you do your research. That will also affect the structure and how you lay out the page design. So you've got to understand this from the outset. This is why I don't want you to do a build it and they will come thing, because the page design and the structure of the website is influenced heavily by what's being searched. And so we talk about things like canonical structures and all that sort of stuff, which, again, is not relevant to our discussion tonight. But just know that as you're building your website, you've got to optimize it for that. I've already mentioned that it's an extension of your brand, so make sure it's consistent with that. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about direct response marketing, because when I was first involved in internet marketing, we were all on the direct response bandwagon, and we used to kind of poo-poo the whole concept about graphic design being important, because we're all about the call to action. We're all about getting the response. These days, design is important. Having good design as well as direct response elements is critical. All things being equal, people still prefer a nicely designed, user-friendly interface. So it's important that you do have good, clean design, that it reflects modern trends, and that you have a situation where it just looks nice but functions well as well. As I said, back in 2009, 2010, it was all about the direct response and nothing about the design, and that's changed now. So both of those are important elements. And I'm just going to show you an example of a direct response website so you can see what one looks like. This is Skype, and clearly on this particular website, the call to action is very clear. What they want you to do is to download Skype, of course. So that's what direct response is. It's having a very clear call to action. It's making sure that nothing's left to chance. So, on your website, we want nice, clear calls to action as well. And I think you'll agree that on this particular Skype website, the design is still aesthetically pleasing. If you go to this website, this might be a little bit out of date now. I don't know if the website's changed, but in this particular instance, this was a video, so it wasn't a still photo. It was a video, and it was a video of people talking and sharing and laughing and all that sort of stuff. So again, you can incorporate video on your website, but do have clear calls to action as well. Very, very important. All right. I want to also just quickly talk to you about analytics, because one of the things about internet marketing, it is a data-driven person's absolute dream. You can analyze just about anything. You can analyze what people click on, how long they stay for, where they hover their mouse. Even if you're just hovering and not clicking, we know what you're doing. So if you're involved in the US spy agencies or something like that, it's this is Big Brother in all its glory. But we certainly know, and this data does allow us to modify the website in response to what's happening on it. So if people are hitting your homepage and leaving after less than a second, then clearly there's something going on there. We need to address that. So that's really what that data is designed for. It also will tell you where your traffic's coming from and what traffic sources are working and which ones are not. Now, I just want to share with you, this is my comment about web developers. Most of them are truly useless. Most of them will often be the cousin of a friend who is a web developer who's done a few things and went to a weekend course. You get the gist there. If you're going to engage a web developer, engage a professional. Even then, you've got to be cautious, because most web developers don't understand marketing. They understand design, and you need to know a web developer who can do both. So it's really important that if you're going to engage a web developer, that you check their track record and you get some of their testimonials, and you ring people and find out, sure, your website looks good, but how much new business has it brought in? Because most web developers, as I said, they focus on building something that's pretty without necessarily understanding on the marketing side. I've just got a comment there from Kiki. So yeah, you've been through that. So completely, you're absolutely spot on. And it's a miserable experience, because if you get it wrong at this point, then you've wasted time, and there's been a problem with not getting the new patient flow that you'd hoped for. But B, you're also probably $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in the hole. So it's it's expensive, not just from the point of view of the web development costs that are lost, but also the opportunity cost of not getting patients through the door. So yeah, find a web developer who's actually really good. And please, if you've got a friend who says their brother or sister does it, unless that person owns a specialist digital agency of some sort, don't get them. One of my clients actually had this complete disaster where they had their sign writer who was dabbling in web development on the side, and they built a website which was just truly, truly ugly. I have not seen anything worse, and it was non-functional as well. And they spent $7,000 with this particular guy, and in the end, they've had to go now to someone I recommended them to, and it's costing them another 10 to get it right. So they've had to just completely throw away the old website, which is a shame. So again, just be cautious there. It's really important. All right, so let's have a look at content. Content is really critical, how you engage your audience. And of course, there's content that can be written, it can be videos, it can be audios, it can be whatever format that you like. But I would suggest having some video on your website is part of a good marketing strategy. You want to make sure that people can see you guys in action and see a bit of movement rather than just stills. Investing in good content writing is critical. I've given you guys in the past some names of some people I've used. Now I'm not using one of them anymore because I've just found that she's getting a bit busy and some of the work that she's turning out for me has been a little bit subpar. But I'm working with a particular girl based out of Guatemala at the moment. She's an Australian girl, but she's a digital nomad. She travels the world, and she's the person who I get to write my stuff. And I think she does quite a nice job. But again, if you know people who can write well, that's fine. But understand that writing for the internet is very different to writing. So if you want to actually read a book about that, the content writer that I no longer use, I'm just being a bit cautious here, did write a book called Words of the Web, Words on the Web, and it's called Wow. And the author's name is Elizabeth Campbell. So she's got a good book. It's certainly worth a read, but I don't use her to write my stuff anymore. Anyway, let's talk about traffic. Traffic is the second half of that equation. We've spoken a lot about the website and what needs to be on it to create compelling conversions, but how do we get people to the website? Of course, you can have the most effective, beautiful, functional website in the world, but if no one visits it, it's essentially lost money. So I want to share with you some sources of traffic, and we'll discuss each of those in a little bit of detail. And again, this is about so you can ask better quality questions to the people that you're engaging. So here are 10 sources of web traffic. The first one is SEO. Now, for those that don't know, SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. And what Search Engine Optimization stands for, what it really means, are those listings that come up in Google organically as opposed to paid advertisements. You'll see the paid advertisements because they usually have a little yellow sign around there that says ad, but all the other listings there are organic. And what Google rewards, and I'm talking Google here because that is the main player, but it's the same for Bing and others, what Google rewards is relevance. So when you type into Google, whatever it is you're looking for, you want to make sure that what comes up is relevant and you're not having to search around too far. So again, this is why that research back at the beginning is really important as well, because it helps us rank organically in Google and the search engines. So getting that right pays dividends down here. The second source of traffic is pay-per-click marketing through Google AdWords or the equivalents on Bing and Yahoo. And you've probably all seen that. Those are the ads that you see that I just referred to with the little yellow sticker. And effectively, that's run through an AdWords account, and you can bid on certain keywords. Now, I don't think it's really worth investing the time, effort, and energy to learn how to be an AdWords manager. It's something that I'd definitely outsource. But the thing that I would say is be careful who you outsource to. I have a particular aversion to some of the marketing companies that will offer to do it for you. I'm cautious of mentioning names, but this is not being published, so that's okay. I have an aversion to using companies such as Reach Local. And the reason I don't use companies like Reach Local is because they'll load your website onto a subdomain. They'll offer you a tracking phone number, and and you never use News Corp. Johan's saying you never ever use News Corp. But the reason why you don't use these companies is they basically take over your website. They give you a tracking phone number, and then of course your patients start to think that's the normal phone number to practice, so you feel compelled to stay with them because you don't want to change your phone number. The other thing around reach local and other things is you can't independently verify the data. So you're taking all that data at face value. So if you're going to use someone to manage your AdWords, I would use a different kind of agency. And there's a gazillion out there. There's, why am I just having a mental blank, but I'll find some for you. There's Swoop Digital who do some good stuff. And there's a guy called Mike Rhodes who owns Web Savvy. He's probably one of the best AdWords managers in the country. They all do good things. They're probably a bit more expensive, but you're going to get good outcomes. The other main challenge with Reach Local and others is they'll do your AdWords, but then they'll go down the road and do your competitors as well. And I think that's a conflict of interest. Facebook ads, we've already spoken about. They're a source of traffic. Articles are a source of traffic too. So again, if you're writing articles for magazines, or if you're writing an article for the newspaper or some other sort of place, make sure you put your web address in the bottom. That's really important. Same with videos. If you've got a YouTube channel that you're trying to rank a video in, make sure you've got links back to your website as well. So use all those social profiles to direct traffic back to your website, which I mentioned earlier, making sure that your website is the sun in your solar system. Guest blogging, so writing a post on someone else's blog is another way of getting traffic to your website, very popular. Social media, again, we've spoken a little bit about YouTube, but other social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, make sure everything points back to your website. Partners are another good way of getting traffic to your website. So if you're doing partnerships with local businesses in your area, making sure that they're promoting your website through an email blast or other things like that, that's important. Email marketing, so all those opt-ins that we collected earlier, that's a way of directing people back to your website. Maybe you want to get them to read the latest blog post or something like that, so you could send an email to those people who have opted in and say, hey, listen, I just wrote a really cool blog post about the effects of sugary foods on teeth in kids or something like that. It's worth a read. So that would be something useful there. And of course, PR. So if you've got a really good newsworthy story, you might want to engage in PR. And there's a whole lot of PR people who can help you with that. So if you're not familiar with SourceBottle, they sometimes put call outs looking for dentists or orthodontists, so you can register as a source there. So if people want to interview you about dentistry, again, that's really good for building your profile, building your authority in the space, and getting some traffic to your website. So again, just another tool in terms of getting traffic. All right, so let's talk about the dreaded beast of social media. And I say dreaded beast not because it's a beast, but because people are often overwhelmed. And I'd say keep it as simple as possible. That's probably the number one rule for social media. Most people come and say, should I be doing Facebook? Should I be doing Instagram? Should I be doing, LinkedIn? Should I be on Twitter? Should I be doing this? And again, it's just about stepping back from that for a moment and remaining strategic rather than tactical and saying, what's the high level view here? What am I trying to achieve from a strategy point of view? Where does my ideal patient hang out? What social media do they consume? And perhaps we can start there. So let's think about that. Get your message right first. That's really critical. Understanding what it is you want to say to your ideal patient and what the messaging is that relates to your brand, relates to your ideal patient. Getting that right is critical, and understanding what that looks like. Okay, then think about your platform. So most people come to me and think about the platform first. I would say think about your message and your ideal patient, and then think about the most relevant platform for you, and then think about how you're going to get that message out to them. Now, your platform of choice might be YouTube, so it's video, so it's not even writing anything. So again, we won't know this until we've gone through the exercises already. The second thing, or the last thing I'd say about platforms, is make sure it's one that you actually enjoy using. So for me, I use Twitter, but it's not something that I inherently enjoy, 140 characters. So we use a tool to syndicate a lot of our stuff out through Twitter. It's called Hootsuite. I'm not advocating that you necessarily go and do it. I'm mentioning it for completeness. But it's making sure that you're not going to feel like you're pulling your hair out as you're engaging in your social media. And I'd also mention that you can get someone else to do some of the legwork on this for you. So in my office, much as I engage with the social media stuff that I do, when it comes to posting the content, so sending it out to LinkedIn, sending it out to Facebook, sending it out to Twitter, Kate, who works in the office, that's her responsibility. I'm involved in the content creation, but she is the person who sends it out. Because I don't enjoy doing it. I enjoy getting it out there. I know it's important to get it out there, but she's good at it and she does it well, so that's fine. I have no problem with that, and I don't think that diminishes in any way from what we do. It's just using your time for the highest and best use. So I think you guys should do the same. I'd also say it's important to keep great records so you know what's working and what's not. And you can write a list of things that you want to do more of, and you can write a list of things you want to do less of, and you can write a list of things you want to stop altogether. And so you can just whittle it down using the 80-20 rule to what's most effective. I wanted just to ask you about what's your story? What's the story that you're trying to tell in your content? And we touched on this a little bit earlier when I shared with you a little bit about, me being the OIC of the Dustbuster. OIC, sorry guys, that's just me going back to my Navy days where it's officer in charge. But it's about sharing your story, telling a little bit about who you are, what you believe, what your philosophies are, what's your values. And so, when we talk about our values, we talk a lot about community. We talk a lot about caring. We talk a lot about, excellence. And so that's all the stuff that comes through our website. We're a very values-driven practice, and that comes through our marketing. And I remember, showing a video of Steve Jobs. And again, the guys, Nino, you would have heard this before, but Steve Jobs, when he went back to Apple after being kicked out, he went back to Apple. And the first thing he did in one of his speeches, he said, people don't care about RAM and megabits and hertz and all those. What they care is, what does Apple stand for? What do we believe in? And he went on to say that Apple believes at its core that people who are crazy enough to change the world actually can. And that's when the advertisement that came out, like, here's to the crazy ones, that very famous advertisement that came out and really relaunched Apple and saved them. And you've got to remember, when he launched that video, when he launched that marketing campaign, they were 3 months away from bankruptcy. Their share price was at $2.46, and Steve Jobs had just been a couple of months in the job after being kicked out 9 years prior. And of course, the corporate turnaround is, part of folklore now. But it started with understanding what their story was. What did they want to communicate? And they wanted to communicate what they stood for. And so I really believe on your internet marketing, your online marketing, you need to tell your story. What is it that you stand for? What are your values? And so again, when we finalize our website, you'll see ours coming through. We're obsessed by detail. We believe that quality takes time. We believe in doing things right the first time. And we believe in creating masterpieces. That's kind of the language that comes out in what we do, because that's how we frame what we do. And again, coming back to you, and if you see our brand strategy, you'll see that comes through very clearly. So understand your story. What story do you want to tell? And then make sure, of course, that once you tell the story in your online marketing, that the story you actually deliver in terms of the patient experience lives up to that. So that's, again, really important. It's not just about the online marketing, it's make sure that you can execute on that story. So I want to share with you about coming to the world of content, because there's a couple of things that you need to consider as you go through this. As I've already indicated, content is king, and you need to make sure that that content is really, really relevant to your audience. So here's a couple of things. Content has become currency. Content is absolutely important in terms of building authority. And one of the things we talk about is content marketing. If you want to attract patients, if you want to attract customers in any field, one of the things that's very hot in the marketing world at the moment, and it always has been, but it seems to be getting a lot of airplay at the moment, is a strategy of preeminence. And that's about positioning yourself as the go-to guy, the go-to girl in your particular space. And the way you do that is to publish. You need to publish content regularly. So I'm not just talking about the content that's on your website, the static pages like the homepage. I'm talking about now blogging and getting your content out into the social media channels as well. So this is where you can talk about what it is you stand for regularly. There's a couple of reasons around that. Yes, it's got good impact for search engine optimization and having Google rank your site better. But one of the key things, it's about a preeminence, a strategy of preeminence. And one of the reasons you'll see me blogging so much, one of the reasons I started a podcast is to create content so that I'm building that strategy of preeminence. And again, I like writing about this stuff. I like talking about this stuff. So there's a bit of, particularly with the podcast, it's a guilty pleasure for me because I'm actually talking to people who I find really interesting and fun. And I get to share that with people and make sure that we distill some lessons out of that. And you guys can, create content too. I'm not saying you have to go and start a podcast because goodness knows that's an extraordinarily time-consuming endeavor. But I am saying you need to be publishing content regularly to build that strategy of preeminence. So Nino, for someone like you, I'm picking on you because I know that you've got a lot of skills and experience in Invisalign, for instance. Though it might not be a product or service that you want to promote heavily at the moment, I'm just using it as an example. You could easily build a strategy around that. Or if it's someone like James who's really big in implants and all that sort of stuff, easily build a strategy around restorative dentistry and preeminence in that space. But it's about, again, understanding the questions that people have, answering them, and making sure that you frame your practice as the provider of the solution, not in a really overt, necessary way, but if you're adding value and helping people, that content over time absolutely becomes a really powerful marketing machine for you. So again, it's important to have a content plan. Rather than just saying, what am I going to sit down and blog about today? It's important to put a strategy in place so that you can be a general and you're directing your content army around the place. You've got all these different pieces of content that you know when you're going to deploy it, where you're going to deploy it, which platforms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's whatever, and you know how you're going to deploy those marketing assets. So be strategic around that and have a plan. So I wanted to share with you a content planner, and you'll see there's an area in your control panel, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. I've uploaded a file there for you. It's the AM30, which is just an internal reference for me, but it's called the Content Creation Calendar, and here it is here. So here's how to create a content plan. You can have a topic around, for instance, let's just talk about, let's talk about CEREC, for instance. We could write some blog posts about how CEREC actually works, and I know you are very adept at using CEREC, so you could talk about, why CEREC's great, how the scanning works, blah, 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 blah. So it's a how-to kind of thing, and the advantages of that to the patient, why you do it and how it actually works. You could have some advice, if you're considering around, things to consider around CEREC. This is when it's suitable, this is when it's not suitable. You could have, lessons, positive or negative. I was talking to someone that has some reservations about having a CAD-CAM crown, and, after discussing it and showing them some of the past cases, we elected to proceed with that patient, and this is the outcome they got. And you could put a before and after photo in or something like that. And put the positive lesson in there. Or if you, depending on the topic you're writing, you could write, so-and-so ignored my advice and they got this, negative outcome. So that would be a negative lesson. You could do a rant, I hate it when people say that CEREC doesn't work. It is, people say the margins don't fit, or, whatever it is that people say. I'm just making this up. And you can get on your soapbox and talk about it. What we know is that CEREC's only as good as the driver. Of course, it's fabulous technology, but it's like putting someone in a Formula One car. If you can't drive it, you're going to crash. But if you put that formula in the hands of a skillful driver, you're going to get exquisite results, and it's the same with CEREC too. Thankfully, I've had lots of training in how to do CEREC, blah, 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 blah. You could do a what-if scenario, some of the objections that might come up. What if the scan doesn't work? What if this, or what if it does work? So the what if is, understanding what objections might come up and speaking to those. And then the why ask could be, why would you choose us for your CEREC crown in this instance? So I've just used one example there that I've just made up literally on the fly. My suggestion would be that you put a bit more thought into it, of course. But you could, the way this content planner works, you could just write down, half a dozen topics down the left-hand side, and then you'd put down 3 or 4 bullet points, or maybe half a dozen bullet points in each of those boxes there. If I've got 6 bullet points about how to for CEREC, and 6 bullet points around advice for CEREC, and 5 or 6 bullet points around lessons or rant and so on, then you've got the content planner mapped out. And of course, if you do that, a blog post really, depending on whether you like long form or short form blog posts, they can range anywhere from 300 or 400 words up to 1,500 words. And some schools of thought say 300 is better, others will say 1,500 is better. My view is you can have a bit of a mix, but you've got literally, how many columns we've got? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. You've got 36 blog posts written, and it would take you literally, I reckon, no more than an hour to complete that chart that I've just got up there for you. So it's easy to do. All you need to do is write down your 5 or 6 bullet points or key lessons that you want to convey in a blog post, or whatever it is you want to do, or video, or whatever language or distribution you want to have, whatever medium you want to have, and think about what's the message you want to get across. If you've got 36 pieces of content planned, and assuming you're doing, one a week, for instance, over time that's 36 weeks of content that you've just planned out in an hour, and then you've just got to create a couple as you go. So it makes life a whole lot easier. So make sure, if you haven't got that download, just download it now and get onto that and start planning out your content strategy for your website. So having a content strategy is really an integral part of an effective online marketing campaign. So guys, we've gone really about for an hour now, and I wanted to make sure we gave you the really key fundamentals of effective online marketing. If you get this right, you're going to have automatic patient attraction mechanisms. You're going to find yourself doing more comprehensive treatment on people you enjoy, and you're going to be able to live in that happy sweet spot where you're doing the work that you love, you're providing great value to the patient, and you're being financially rewarded as well. So there's a lot of really good reasons to nail your online marketing. If you've got any questions as we wrap up, please feel free to put them into the chat box as we go. Really happy to answer that. I don't know if that's Anoop or Kiki just off the fairies. That's cool. The content calendar, maybe we could discuss that over our next phone call. Of course we can. Essentially, just to recap with that though, guys, if you write a list of topics down the left-hand side under the topics column, and then you would write 5 or 6 bullet points about a how-to for that topic, 5 or 6 bullet points for advice on that particular topic. Same with lessons, either positive or negative, a rant or a what if, which is objection, and why us. So if you've got that for 36 blog posts, then you've got the thinking behind it ready and mapped out to go. So so that you don't have to think about it, and rather than sitting down at your desk and saying, what am I going to write today, you can just go to your content calendar and go, great, well, I'm going to talk about CEREC, or I'm going to talk about Invisalign, or I'm going to talk about whitening, tooth whitening, or whatever it happens to be. So absolutely, we can go through that in more detail, so that's fine, but that's just to catch you up there. So cool, no problems. If you've got any other questions now, guys, please put them in. And while you're thinking, I'm just going to ask you if you could type in for me what's been most valuable out of going through that online marketing to what's the thing that's added most value to you so you can take it away and implement it, because implementation is, of course, everything. So if you can just take a moment to type into the chat box what's the most valuable thing you got out of tonight so we know where you're focusing in, and that would be cool. All right. Okay. Johan, you got the you've written content. I'm assuming it's the content calendar and content marketing. That's cool, mate. Fabulous. Yeah, that ties into your strategy of preeminence, and that'll be really helpful for you with those big cases too, mate. So again, build that strategy of preeminence. Fantastic. Good work. You'll be trying to create better content. That's fantastic, mate. Awesome. Kiki, telling your story and what matters to you most. That's fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, Photoshop smile design. Cool. Awesome. And it's probably the way to go. Awesome. Okay, guys, that's fabulous. I'm looking forward to catching up with you guys individually as we go through. I can see Nina and Nitin and all those guys there. That's great. I hope you've all enjoyed tonight. Looking forward to catching up with you all soon. Don't forget to grab the download. But until next time, take good care and we'll catch up soon. Okay, guys. Bye for now.